Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the very first ever Midwest Climate Adaptation monthly science seminar of the Midwest CASC. This is a place where we're going to talk about what we're doing. We'll present research. We'll talk about opportunities and activities that the CASC is pursuing. And we are starting today with an introduction to the CASC Consortium. This will be in some respects a continuation of the mini symposium that we hosted in December. Maybe some of you attended that. That featured current CASC research projects, but we didn't talk that much about the consortium itself. So that's what we're going to focus on today, the contributors to the CASC Consortium. I'm recording this, or we're recording this event, so please be sure to mute and decide whether you'd like to be on video or not. But I invite our presenters to please turn their video on when they are presenting. So our focus today is on meeting the CASC Consortium. So the new Midwest Climate Adaptation Science Center is composed of 9 partners together with the USGS distributed across the region. One of those partners is the University of Minnesota, but we're not going to hear from the University of Minnesota today. We're going to hear from everybody else. That means we have 7 presentations in the span of an hour, and each of the presenters is invited to share whatever they would like to convey to others. Maybe it's their contribution, what they bring to the consortium, what they're excited about, what capacities and expertise they bring to bear. So each presentation is going to be a little bit different, and they're going to be about 8 minutes long. And this is the order of operations. We'll move quickly among them so that everybody has a chance to share with the group what they'd like to say about their organization and the Midwest CASC. I am recording this. We do not yet have a website. We will have a website sometime soon. And when we do, we will have an archive of all these science seminars. So Tom Knote is our first speaker. Tom, are you there? I see you.
Yep.
Grab the screen. I will let you know when 8 minutes, if you don't stop before 8 minutes, and take it away.
Can folks see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, awesome. Okay, well, hello everybody. My name is Tom Knote. I am the newly minted director of the Sustainable Development Institute at the College of Menominee Nation. We're a tribal college located in northeastern Wisconsin. And the Sustainable Development Institute is actually an entity that exists within the College of Menominee Nation. So we're the research arm aspect of the tribal college. So again, to give you some context and where we're located.
Do you want us to, sorry, interrupt you. Do you want us to see your presenter view? It seems fine, but we get to see one slide ahead as well. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that works for me. Let me see. Well, I guess we
get a little preview of where you're going.
Yeah, we'll roll with it. Okay. So again, context for you folks, we're located in northeastern Wisconsin in Menominee County, which is also the Menominee Indian Reservation. It's highlighted there in yellow on the map of Wisconsin. And historically, actually, Menominee lands extended from the UP all the way down to Chicago and westward all the way over to the Mississippi River. Of course, now we exist in Menominee County. We have a unique history. We're one of the only tribes that actually has a reservation and county that have the same borders. The land itself is over 90% forested. It's sustainably managed forest, while also the tribe also exists in 4 separate villages on the reservation. Move along here. So again, like I mentioned, the Sustainable Development Institute, this is our building. This is where we operate out of. We actually exist just off the reservation, just south of the reservation. and just south of the College of Menominee Nation campus. You can see here in the picture in the background with the solar panels, that's actually campus right there. That's our trades building. And we actually can see our agricultural plots, which are just in front of our trades building there. I don't know if you folks can see my mouse, but those are some of our ag plots right there on the College of Menominee Nation campus. But this is our building, the Sustainable Development Institute. We have a staff of about, I want to say 8, maybe 9 folks. And I'll explain a little bit more on where we spend kind of our thematic areas in. So what shaped SDI, right? So SDI was founded, or the Sustainable Development Institute was founded along with the College of Menominee Nation. It was chartered in 1993. This work focused on and built around the Menominee ways of conceptualizing sustainability. So community members, Menominee tribal members, our college founders kind of got together and decided that Indigenous sustainability, or sustainability from an Indigenous perspective, is very important, something that we should really hold on to. And this is back in the early 90s. So thus SDI was born out of that, right? So in addition to this led to the development of the Menominee Theoretical Model of Sustainability, or the MTMS, and that guides our work. And so what is the Menominee Theoretical Model of Sustainability? Well, it's this 6-dimension idea of sustainability that is centered around Menominee autochthony, or this profound sense of place that's tied to the Menominee people, right? And so the 6 dimensions include land and sovereignty, the natural environment, institutions, technology, economics, and human perceptions, activities, and behaviors. And this guides the work at SDI. So it looks at human and environmental relationships. It's also based on the Menominee's unique history of sustainable forestry. I kind of mentioned that in the beginning, that Menominee kind of has a, really the founders of sustainable forestry, right? As I mentioned, the 6 areas of dimensions, the central concept of autochthony, and sustainable development from our perspective is the process of maintaining and balancing and adapting tensions between these dimensions. So when we talk about issues that arise within the community around sustainability from the Menominee perspective, we tend to utilize this model and helping us as a planning tool to really discuss the various issues. And the unique thing is that Indigenous knowledge is directly tied to it, right? And that it's intergenerational and it's always evolving. So at SDI specifically, some of our focus areas, because we are part of the College of Menominee Nation, our big focus is on research and our students, right? Student enrichment. So these are some of our thematic areas. So like what our students are working on in various internships, outreach, and education, right? So we work in climate change adaptation, Indigenous peoples and forests, food sovereignty and sustainable agriculture, campus sustainability and energy, student enrichment, and of course, Indigenous peoples and Indigenous knowledge. So some of the spheres of influence, or what areas that we work on in addition to our thematic areas, include research, education, outreach, and practice. And our approach to programming here at SDI, at the Sustainable Development, is through a Menominee lens. So learning from and reflecting upon the Menominee land ethic and cultural practices. And I guess in closing, of course, our students are the most valuable piece in addition to the community, our work with the community. So we offer undergraduate internships, student worker positions, postdocs, grad students, youth workers, and we also do a lot of work with the youth through our high school programming, or our SLC, which is an acronym for the Sustainable Leadership Cohort. I think that's all I have. So if you have any questions, oh, in addition to it, one of my colleagues is actually on the line with me, Rebecca Edler. She's a sustainability coordinator here at the Sustainable Development Institute. So I don't know if we want to take questions now, Jessica, or later.
Tom, I would like to encourage folks to ask you questions in the chat window or to make any comment or any inquiries about CMN. Let's start there. And if we have opportunity at the end of the presentations, we'll do it too. But please, folks, if you have comments or questions for Tom, let's make good use of the chat window. And our second presenter is Rob Kroll. Rob, are you ready to grab the screen? Okay. Take it away.
Bonjour, Rob Indígena CASC, Guyana Damascene, Philadelphia, Dunjaba, Anishinaabe Aki Endad, GLIFWC Indanoki. Hi, everybody. My name is Rob Kroll. I am the Climate Change Program Coordinator for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. I've been with the commission now for about 3 years. I'm actually a policy analyst, not a scientist, which can get interesting sometimes when you're working with a group of research folks, but we move on. So let's see. So GLIFWC is an intertribal natural resource agency. We exercise authority delegated to us by our 11 Ojibwe member tribes to implement federal court orders and interjurisdictional agreements related to their treaty rights. And we've been called the Indian DNR in some places, which isn't exactly accurate. We do wildlife and fisheries management. We do conservation law enforcement. We create and implement a model conservation code, which allows each of our member tribes to regulate the off-reservation hunting and fishing and gathering of their members. We operate a comprehensive public information program. We do environmental protection and analysis. We do original and collaborative research. So all of the same functions as pretty much any natural resources agency, whether state or federal. But our focus is always on protecting, preserving, and helping the tribes to implement their pre-existing rights to hunt, fish, and gather in lands that were ceded to the United States. So we're going to talk about that just a little bit more. So if you look here, this is the area in which we operate in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. The red areas are today's reservations for our 11 member tribes. The areas outlined in black are actually the areas that were ceded to the US government. The dates there are the treaties in which those lands were ceded. Should mention that this land cession was not something that was done voluntarily. It was not something that was done because the tribes felt that they wanted to share their land with white settlers. It was essentially done because otherwise they were going to be forced to move from their ancestral homelands. In each of these treaties, the tribes reserved their pre-existing rights to hunt, fish, and gather in the lands that were ceded to the United States. These aren't special rights that were granted to the tribes by the government. These are rights they always had, that they negotiated to keep, that tribal leaders at that time knew that 7 generations in the future, which is where we are now, tribal citizens would need to have those rights to be able to sustain themselves and their culture. So this is Article 5 of the 1837 treaty. You can see it's fairly straightforward. The privilege of hunting, fishing, and gathering wild rice upon the lands, the rivers, and lakes included in the territory ceded is guaranteed to the Indians during the pleasure of the President of the United States. When you're interpreting treaties, when you're interpreting other documents like this, which govern relationships between the United States government and the tribes, it is always done from the perspective of the indigenous people, the people who signed the treaties. And articles like this were interpreted by the people who signed them to mean that they kept these rights in perpetuity for their people. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that way. And when the states came in and took over regulation of natural resources, tribal members practicing their treaty rights off reservation were arrested, cited, jailed, and that continued from the mid-1800s to the mid-20th century. It took a series of court cases for these treaty rights to be reaffirmed and recognized. And one of these cases in Wisconsin directly led to the formation of GLIFWC as an entity which would represent the tribe's work with tribal natural or state natural resource agencies and help the tribes to regulate tribal member behavior off reservation. One of the prime examples of sovereignty is actually self-regulation. So we'll talk just a little bit about the GLIFWC climate change program. How will climate change affect tribes? The same way it's going to affect everybody else and then some. And I'll let you hear it in somebody else's words that are a lot better than mine. No, it's not going to play. I'm sorry. So to paraphrase the quote that was going to be on there, tribes have what's been called traditional ecological knowledge, indigenous knowledge. It's a knowledge system that goes back to antiquity. We say since time immemorial. And it is oral history and knowledge that is still used to guide behavior today. The tribal leader or the tribal elder that was speaking in that quote was talking about signs that have been used to determine when to do particular activities. And climate change is changing how those relationships work, which in the eyes of some people changes the or lessens maybe the impact of that oral history. So GLIFWC created a climate change program back in 2015 with two goals. One is to use a holistic approach to look at climate change impacts on culturally important beings in the ceded territory and help adapt to those impacts. And also to promote the recognition that Anishinaabe or Ojibwe knowledge and worldview provide important and needed contributions to the understanding of resource vulnerability and climate adaptation. A couple of our projects, some of you may have seen these. One is our climate change vulnerability assessment. It came out back in 2018. It combines institutional science in terms of the Climate Change Vulnerability Index, along with traditional ecological knowledge gathered from Ojibwe knowledge holders, hunters, gatherers, and also GLIFWC and tribal natural resources staff into a document that looks at 10 or 11 culturally important beings from the lens of both science and traditional ecological knowledge. We expect later on this year to release version 2 of the vulnerability assessment, which will be looking at about 60 different species, and it'll be a much expanded resource. The other one you may have seen before is the Tribal Climate Adaptation Menu, Debugin Anishinaabe Ejitwad. And this is a resource that was created by a diverse group of folks from tribes, agencies, with a focus on culturally appropriate climate adaptation for tribes and for their non-tribal partners. And one concept from the menu that I challenge you to take back with you is the idea that we work with relatives and not resources. You know, Jibwe Mo, we say, Ndinwe Magnidug, which is all of my relations. All of my relations don't just mean my aunts and my cousins and my uncles, but it also means everything that has a spirit, everything that's animate, everywhere in the world that ever existed and ever will exist. And our focus at GLIFWC is always 7 generations in the future and the decisions that we help tribal leaders make today and how that's going to affect the tribes and all the rest of us moving forward. With that, I'll say Miigwech, this is Dawieg. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Rob. Questions and thoughts for Rob, please put in the chat window. We'd really like to use that platform for a dialogue. Kim Hall of the Nature Conservancy is our next presenter. She's going to grab the screen. I'm running my 8-minute clock, Kim, and I'll let you know. Take it away.
Great, thanks very much. Very excited to be here representing TNC's collaboration within the Midwest CASC. Just a little bit about our organization straight off the website. Our mission is to conserve the lands and water on which all life depends. Clearly that's a big mission and it involves a huge number of partnerships. And so that's why we see this Midwest CASC as a really important connection for us to be involved with. Climate and climate change adaptation is a key aspect of trying to achieve this mission. And again, we're looking forward to partnering with the group and all of you that are on this webinar to help make this happen in the Midwest. Okay. So connecting with TNC can be kind of tricky for people from the outside. We have a very complicated organizational structure. And so I think as my role within this CASC is basically to help make those connections as seamless as possible. Just for those of you that are interested in engaging with us on projects, we are grounded in our work in state chapters. Most of you that know the TNC probably have met with or worked with folks from our state chapters. We then have a division structure. We have the Midwest and Great Plains divisions that overlap the Midwest CASC geography. These divisions support the state chapters in many ways and help network the work they're doing, help identify regional priorities. The chapters and divisions connect to our US teams. We've got US climate policy teams, for example, and then we also have regional and staff priorities related to the CASC goals and the CASC resources, including our North America Science team, which is part of what I am, and our Protect Land and Water strategy, for example. Then if you go a layer up, we've got global initiatives and global staff, including groups that focus on things like science synthesis and application, like our Science for People and Nature Partnership, which I'll show you one example of. And then I'll end here with our global level. Our lead scientist is Catherine Hayhoe, Dr. Catherine Hayhoe, a well-known atmospheric scientist that's done a lot of work in this region, also an outstanding communicator on climate. So these are kind of the folks that will be bringing at different levels of time and expertise to work in this region. Just to give you a sense of what our priorities are for this region, these are pulled from the Midwest and Great Plains divisions working documents towards our 2030 outcome goals. You can see here that they are a mixture of a focus on climate, emissions reduction, and renewable siting kinds of projects, and then many different focal areas that address different land and water resource areas, including number 6, which is really engaging actively on the 30 by 30 goals under the Biden administration of increasing the protection in the US. And then several strategies that relate to how the land is managed, how the land is used, so regenerative agriculture, application of fire, and sharing our resources on related to bison and grassland management with any native indigenous populations that are interested in support in that area. I'm doing this really fast, sorry. But one of the things that's very exciting for us within TNC is the opportunity to work with all of the partners in the CASC to leverage the lands that we either own through own individually at the chapter level or have easements on. This is a fairly recent update on our resources met area, but this is a place where we are investing a lot of our time right now in figuring out how to better leverage what we can learn in our management and science on these different places across the region covered by the CASC. So as students and other partners look at these points on the map, please think about how you might include a TNC preserve or managed area in your research. We'd love to talk about that. Coming from the other side, I think we have a lot to share and offer related to innovations in collaborative science and science usability. I'm just going to show you two examples, again, given that we've got just a short amount of time. But this is a map from a 12-year-long process to identify conservation priorities that basically incorporates many different types of thinking about climate risks and climate science into a map that is designed to be usable at the scale of local land protection decisions. So it's a map to guide land protection in the context of producing a safety net for nature as different species shift in response to climate change. Again, something that has involved over 120 different scientific partners across the region. I'm sorry, over 287 partners across the region, and again, is designed to be actionable and usable at the site scale. Another example that I'd like to highlight is this decision support tool and basically a way of communicating synthesis that's called ag evidence. Since synthesis is a big part of what the CASC is going to be doing, I think we've got some great examples that can help sort of frame what's possible in terms of communicating science in new and innovative ways. In this one, you basically figure out what box in the matrix you're interested in looking at in terms of recent evidence for the benefit of that particular combination of things. So if you look at the bottom corner here, we've got science synthesized that relates to tillage practices in agriculture and climate mitigation. If you follow that square, you can then look at summary data on all of the different practices in that area. Again, it's just one example of how I think that TNC can bring some interesting innovations to the CASC that will help us really leap forward and make some great contributions in the area of providing decision relevant science in the region. I'll stop there.
All right, questions and comments for Kim in the chat window, please. So let's take stock of where we've been so far. Tom Knoop from the College of Menominee Nation presented about the college and its contributions to the CASC. We heard from Rob Kroll, who talked to us about GLIFWC, its mission and what the perspective and obligations and opportunities and resources it brings to the CASC. And Kim Hall from the Nature Conservancy has just shared its membership and what it can bring and contribute to the CASC. We're now going to switch to 4 big public universities who are partners with the University of Minnesota in the CASC. And up to go first will be Dana Infante from Michigan State University. Take it away, Dana. And I'm going to run my clock. Good job, everybody, staying on time so far. I'm so proud of you.
Are you seeing slides in the presenter mode?
Yes, we see them in the presenter mode.
Okay, I don't know how to show them.
Dana, I think it's fine. I mean, the only thing I don't like about presenter notes is the notes, but it doesn't look like you have notes. So
I do not have notes, so we're good to go. Okay.
Go for it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dana Infante. I'm a professor in the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife at Michigan State University, and I also serve as an assistant director for Ag Bioresearch, which is our ag experiment station. And I want to acknowledge my co-PIs on this effort from Michigan State, Richard Kobe, who is the chair and a professor in the Department of Forestry, and Gary Roloff, who is a chair and professor in the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. So for those who may not be familiar, Michigan State is located in East Lansing, Michigan, which is in the central portion of the Lower Peninsula. It was established in 1855 and became a land-grant university with the passage of the Morrill Act in 1862. And since that time has had a focus on openness, accessibility, and service as part of its mission. So in talking about the capacity at Michigan State to support the mission of the Midwest CASC, I realize there's a lot of information on this slide, but it's intended to convey that there's a lot of capacity at Michigan State. In the column on the left, you will see a list of the 3 colleges and 9 academic departments, which support currently over 50 researchers actively working on science that supports the mission of the CASC. And this was determined from a survey we conducted this past fall. I also want to point out that we have our ag experiment station called Ag Bio Research, promoting climate-focused work. And we have MSU Extension intended to better share the outputs of that research with our stakeholders across the region. Within academic units, we have centers that are formed, some of which help channel our expertise, and I'll say a little bit about those in a minute. I want to briefly acknowledge the Kellogg Biological Station, which is a research station promoting both terrestrial and aquatic research, and Corey Marsh Ecological Research Center, which is a new center you might not have heard of yet, but it's just getting established. Again, a ton of capacity to cover, and for the sake of the 8-minute time slot today, I'll only be covering the topics in green, but please reach out if you'd like information or better contacts on any of these other units. So I'm going to start with Ag Bio Research, which is MSU's agricultural experiment station. And really, this is a unit on campus intended to support both basic and applied research that ideally would contribute to economic prosperity in the state of Michigan and to quality of life in Michigan and around the world. Now, historically, the Ag Experiment Station has focused on agricultural research, but over the last decade, they've invested heavily in trying to do more to promote natural resources. And in recent years, a high priority of Ag Bio Research has been to help agencies think about changing climate. The next feature of Michigan State that I want to talk about briefly is called PERM, which is a partnership between MSU and 2 natural resource management agencies, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and the Great Lakes Fishery Commission. PERM stands for the Partnership for Ecosystem Research and Management. It's a partnership that's been in place for almost 30 years now. And the goal for this partnership is really to assist agencies in solving problems. Through PERM, faculty salaries are supported in part with the idea that they are responding to agency challenges. Additionally, the PERM agreement allows us to facilitate the transfer of research dollars from the agencies to the university so that there's little delay in addressing problems. This unit is really about capacity, and through PERM, it helps ensure that natural resource management decisions are being supported by the best available science that Michigan State has to offer. I want to next highlight one of our academic units, the Department of Forestry. They have a broad ranging expertise in the unit, but some of that expertise related specifically to climate include researchers working on forest ecology, fire ecology and management, urban forestry and climate resilience, and forest carbon and climate change. And kudos to the Forestry Department. They have recently become a charter organization of the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. And Rich Kobe, who's chair of this unit, could answer more questions about that if you wanted to know. The Department of Forestry, like other units on campus, is committed to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this slide just shows some of the recent achievements that the department has made. I'll mention they have a 3-2 partnership with Medgar Evers College, And they also have 2 new partnerships with community colleges in the region. I'll switch to talk a little bit about the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife. This is a large department on campus. We have many faculty, and this list is just some of the expertise of my colleagues. We have folks working on fish and wildlife ecology, landscape ecology, food webs, genetics, fish and wildlife disease, human dimensions of natural resource management. And a final set of expertise I'll mention today is we have multiple faculty with expertise in structured decision-making who are actively working with natural resource management agencies on solving problems related to current as well as future conditions in natural resources across the state. The Quantitative Fisheries Center is one of those centers I mentioned that helps to channel some of our expertise. Really, the focus of the QFC is on promoting a better understanding of fish communities and population dynamics with a major focus, but not entire focus, on Great Lakes fisheries. Some of the partner agencies that directly fund work to QFC are listed on this slide, some of which are familiar to you, I'm sure. And I'll mention that Travis Brendan has recently been named as the new director of QFC. His email is here if you'd like to reach out. An additional center that is just getting off the ground is the Center for Cooperative Ecological Resilience. This is a partnership between Michigan State and the Sault Ste. Marie Tribe of Chippewa Indians. Gary Roloff is the lead on this unit, and some of its objectives include developing approaches to use Indigenous and Western knowledge to inform conservation action, and promoting ecological sustainability by aligning university and tribal resources. Now, the last feature of Michigan State that I want to highlight briefly is GLISA, which stands for Great Lakes Integrated Sciences and Assessments. GLISA is a team that is one of 11 regional integrated sciences and assessment teams supported by NOAA. Broadly, the focus of GLISA is to help, and RISAs in general, is to help the nation prepare and adapt to climate variability and change. The PI team for GLISA includes colleagues from the University of Michigan, which leads this effort, as well as the University of Wisconsin and, of course, Michigan State. So I think I've hit my 8 minutes pretty closely. Again, very quick, very broad tour of Michigan State, but please do reach out if you'd like any more information.
All right, Dana has invited folks to reach out. They can start by reaching out and saying something in the chat window if they'd like to. And our next presenter, we turn to Indiana University with Gabe Filippelli.
Well, hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to introduce you to IU's Environmental Resilience Institute, which is the main partner for our efforts. This institute was founded about 5 years ago by Ellen Ketterson, and she's the founding director. And now I'm the executive director of ERI, as we call it. The mission is really to enhance resilience to climate change, and that's by accurately predicting impacts. So it's the science part. Effectively partnering with communities, that's some of the solution space, and then implementing feasible and equitable research-informed solutions. So we've gotten a lot of kudos from our work in communities on climate adaptation planning, and that's one of our big efforts. But we are also underpinned by a significant amount of science. Some of it's particularly suitable for the Midwest context. ERI has about 90 faculty affiliates, and we function mainly on 2 campuses. And there's 3 program areas. So this is our staff in front of our house. The program areas include the research development, resilience capacity building. So that's largely the working directly with communities and non-for-profits, as well as communication and outreach arm. So I'm going to walk through a few of our adaptation and educational tools, and then dive into a little bit about what we provide in terms of research. We have about several aspects of our climate adaptation tools. We run something called the Environmental Resilience Institute Toolkit, which provides a very easy interface for mayors or individuals to assess their own resilience to climate change and to scale what actions are needed first to implement just solutions for climate change. And this is sort of bridged over to what we call the Indiana Resilience Cohort. So this is our own students that we embed in cities and towns and non-for-profits and now businesses to help them find solutions, right? A lot of them don't have the capacity to have their own sustainability offices. We built something called the Hoosier Resilience Index, which kind of informs on systems resilience. And I'll have some links for this in the chat afterwards. And we have a webinar series. And webinars free and open to anybody. We've got a couple great ones coming up. So you might want to sign in when you get the chance. We run a podcast in this climate where we feature both local and global speakers on various aspects related to climate change as part of our educational arm. Now, I'd like to dive into some of the research that we've done over the last 4 years or so to give you a context of, I think, what beyond the toolkit and implementation arm that we have, which is very robust and I think can contribute to the Midwest CASC. But we have a whole host of researchers who have focused on developing, for example, a detailed model of soil hydrological forecasting as well as water hydrological forecasting model for the White River watershed. Also, of course, have downscale models for climate change, projects on restoration, riverway restoration, and a lot of work on flood prediction. That's obviously one of the scientific realities of climate change in the Midwest is significantly increased extreme precipitation events. So this helps us kind of get ahead of some of that. We have a very robust wildlife research group led by Ellen Ketterson, of course, who's famous for her work with juncos, but they range from everything from examining isotopic composition to understand migration of avian species, urban light pollution, and its effect on attracting birds and maybe leaving them undernourished for if this is their main migration stop. The role that birds play in actually transporting infectious disease, as well as a number of tracking and survival features. I'm just going to do one deep dive because just for the length of time, this is some of Ellen's great work where it's integrated MODIS stations near Bloomington and part of a broader network to understand the role that songbird migration plays in terms of pesticide impacts and disease. And there's many more examples that you'll find on our website. I always have to show a big ugly picture of a tick because we all know Lyme disease is spreading pretty savagely throughout the Midwest, but there's other invasive species, of course, mosquito. So we have a very robust program on mosquito species, as well as their ability to harbor and spread tropical diseases, as well as through vectors, zoonotic vectors. And we have a pretty robust area of research on various invasive species and invasive species restoration, both in rural and urban settings. I've been involved quite a bit on our green infrastructure project. So it includes forests as an infrastructure, so a very robust forestry program. But been looking a lot at urban riparian systems and how they will respond and have responded to climate change, as well as measuring and building out our understanding of how green infrastructure needs to be enhanced to mitigate things like stormwater impacts, heat island effects, and other climatic impacts. And a kind of final view into our research is we have very robust social sciences research, because with climate, you can't just move minds, you've got to move hearts, right, to make a difference. So we've run now 2 versions of a Hoosier awareness of climate change in the environment. We have some really interesting results that shows that even in a conservative red state, Hoosiers are actually very concerned about climate change, and increasingly so, and they understand the role of humans, as well as engaging with communities, mapping resources, how farmers' interactions with the environment, and motivation, what motivates people and organizations to be more sustainable. I will drop in the chat our website, but basically our website is the same as our email address, eri.iu.edu. We'd love to hear from you. And just a preview, we have our book, our ERI book, published by Indiana University Press, coming out in November, Climate Change and Resilience in Indiana and Beyond.
Thanks, Rob. So you're going to put those resources in the chat window.
I will, and it was Gabe, but yes.
Oh, Gabe, thank you. Gabe, it's because I see all these names in front of me right now. Thank you, Gabe. Please put those in the chat so that folks can consume them. And moving along, I hope you're hanging in there, everybody, for this show and tell. This gives us a chance to give you a comprehensive view of all the terrific resources and partners coming together around the Midwest CASC. So next we turn to the neighboring state of Illinois, where Jeff Braun and Jeremy Guest are going to tell us about capacities and resources at the University of Illinois.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Hopefully you can see my screen. So if I can get thumbs up. Yep, okay, great. So my name is Jeremy Guest. I'm the Acting Associate Director for Research for our Institute for Sustainability, Energy, and Environment, and I'm a faculty in Civil Environmental Engineering. And then Jeff Braun will speak in a few minutes. So he's our Stuart and Nancy professor. It's Jay professor and Levinik professor in sustainability. And he's with our Natural Resources and Environmental Sciences. So like you've heard from the other participants, there's only so much we can cover. So we're going to try and give you a high level kind of introduction and then a little bit of a couple more specific examples about Illinois. So we're one of the southernmost in the consortium, but to give you some sense, we're a very large university. So over 56,000 students, over 1,900 faculty, tenure track faculty. And lots of research institutes, centers, labs on campus. And then we also have the the Institute for Sustainability, Energy, and Environment, which is where both Jeff and I are associated. And so IC, our Sustainability Institute, is responsible. We have a three-part mission for research, education and outreach, and campus and regional sustainability. And so to give you an example from the campus and regional, we're responsible for the Illinois Climate Action Plan as a campus, but that includes local and sustainability planning in our communities, includes goals for land and water. And not only do we help set targets, guide progress, provide a dashboard on progress, but we also support the funding of projects to pursue local and regional sustainability. But our plans are online. There's a link down here if you like, and you can always find expertise at Illinois with the experts link, or Jeff and I are happy to serve in that role to help make connections. For IC's research portfolio, we focus on these main themes of, in particular, energy, sustainable agriculture, but also global climate change research and water research are two of our core themes. And we run what we call our scholars networks, which is to connect campus researchers with opportunities and to build initiatives and help coordinate initiatives, including with regional stakeholders. And so our global climate change research scholars have over 130 scholars that study the sciences of climate change, impacts, vulnerability and justice, and mitigation and adaptation. And our water research scholars network is over 110 people, and they look at adapting in a changing climate, sustainable water, food and energy, safe drinking water and public health, and resilient watersheds and ecosystems. And just to give you a couple very small examples of the type of work that goes on here. So we have researchers, for example, in atmospheric sciences, we try and understand climate change and our capacity to predict its impacts, its effects. And so, for example, this is an illustration of statistical downscaling where we can try and understand climate change impacts, but the grid cell, the size over which we can predict what's going to happen may make it difficult for us to come up with actionable plans in a region. But there are methods to basically understand at smaller and smaller scales what the likely impacts are of climate change. And that's an area of study here. Another is to understand what those implications mean for communities, including, this is one example, but of flooding, and we're not immune from those types of impacts as well. Other examples of the types of work that go on here are, we do have very large initiatives related to agriculture and the built environment as well, and their interaction with the natural environment and natural resources. And so there's significant capacity for field testing. We have very large scale agricultural fields and sensing, both of air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, but also soil quality, carbon sequestration, nutrient runoff, things like that. We also have an IC supported initiative for remote sensing. And so that remote sensing is enabling field scale estimates of emissions. And so the intent is to understand in an individual field, how are people's actions influencing nutrient emissions to surface waters, carbon emissions, what's happening with plant productivity and so on. And then I wanted to include a water example here. And this is an example of how water levels in Lake Michigan can influence actually the flow of rivers near Lake Michigan, and then where the direction nutrients actually go. So these are two different, this is a human impact and environment. So this is our wastewater treatment plant in particular, but the actual changes in the level in Lake Michigan influences the direction of flow, and then where that discharge ends up and how it impacts the aquatic environment. And I'll hand it off to Jeff.
Okay, Jeremy, thanks a lot. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the other resources and some of the other groups that we have on campus, apart from IC. And one of the most notable ones is the Prairie Research Institute. And that is an amalgamation of 5 what are called scientific surveys. And a lot of the states that you're in, if you're outside of Illinois, used to have scientific surveys. And for various reasons, we held on to ours. So they represent in aggregate, I think about 500 scientists and staff, and they do all sorts of monitoring of biological and physical and human resources, and a lot of research as well. They have several research stations throughout the state, a lot of them focused on our river systems. There's one on Lake Michigan, and they're just an incredibly valuable, they're part of the university, and the PRI is an incredibly valuable resource for our campus and for the region, for the CASC, by increasing the capacity and the reach. It's like having another campus within our campus with all the expertise that's represented by the Prairie Research Institute. So if you're not familiar with the Prairie Research Institute, just Google them. There's a address right there, and you'd be able to find out all the things that they're doing. They have published a lot and a lot of reports. And they're also, basically part of the university again, and they work with a lot of the academic units on campus as well. And speaking of academic units, I just wanted to talk about a few of those. I'm in the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Sciences, which of course I think is wonderful. And we also have a couple of schools that are very relevant to the CASC and to the CASC mission. One is the School of Integrative Biology. The other one is the School of Earth, Society, and the Environment. Illinois is real school happy, so a lot of our science departments are within schools. Both of those schools are in our Liberal Arts and Sciences College. Department of Natural Resources, or NRES, is in the Agricultural College. And I just picked out some of the specific areas of expertise that we have there. I didn't want to do a deep dive since we were next to last. I figured we'd be running late anyways. So I just picked out some areas of expertise. This is what my friends do. So aquatic ecology and invasive species, we do a lot of work on that. Those of you who are aquatic ecologists in the group probably work with a lot of our aquatic ecologists, and that is biological and physical resources. Avian ecology and conservation is really good here because that's what I do. And we just have a lot of bird nerds here. And we do a lot with land change, with land condition, and with climate change. So again, a lot of relevance to the mission of the CASC. Entomology and disease ecology, kind of like what came up with Indiana. We do a lot with vector-borne disease, mosquitoes, ticks, what have you. One thing about Illinois that's interesting is if you go sort of north-south, we go from a heavily urban built environment down into a fundamentally agricultural landscape. And you get into the southern part of the state, and it actually, there's wilderness areas and natural forests. So we just have a lot of different ability to study a lot of climate change in a lot of different environmental contexts, and urban ecology is one of them. We also do a lot of work with maintaining, I just got cut off by Jessica.
No,
So
that was me.
a lot
That
of
was
work
me.
with-
I thought
we
you
do
were
lots
done.
of work with everything. And next is Jessica talking about our other neighbor to the north.
That
So-
was Jeremy, but it was
That's my
brilliant.
fault.
Okay,
All
I
right.
didn't time it. So
Thank you, Jeff, so much. Our last presenter, and we will take, Jake will get his full time here from the University of Wisconsin. So, and we are archiving this content for future use. So Jake, please take it away.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Well, I am here to represent the University of Wisconsin-Madison, just to the north. And I will try to keep this short. I know we don't really want to go over, so I'll do my best. So again, University of Wisconsin-Madison. An overview, it's a really large research-focused university with about 45,000 students, a lot of graduate students doing research as well. So we have close to 14,000 graduate students at UW-Madison, about 1.3 billion in annual research expenditures. So it's just a really big school, and pretty much everything under the sun is happening on campus across a wide range of schools and departments and colleges. UW-Madison is the flagship of the University of Wisconsin system, which is comprised of 13 different four-year universities. And so there are connections amongst all of these other universities as well. And I think that's a strength that UW-Madison brings, is the ability to tap into these other campuses as well for specific expertise. I'd also just like to highlight a kind of a core principle, and that is the Wisconsin idea. And this is something that really does embody the mindset at UW-Madison, which is that the boundaries of the university are that of the state and beyond. And I think there is this belief that there's a need for our work to serve the well-being of society. And I think that concept ties in really nicely to our participation in the CASC. And I can say on behalf of many people at UW-Madison, we are really excited to be connected and participating in the brand new Midwest CASC. So the Midwest CASC has three PIs at UW-Madison. The first is me, and my area of expertise is lakes and inland waters, fish and fisheries, and aquatic invasive species. So I really sort of represent the aquatic realm. The second is Dan Vimont, and his area of expertise is climate science. He does a lot of work on El Nino Southern Oscillation, climate modeling, and variability. So he is a true card-carrying bona fide climate scientist. And the third is Ben Zuckerberg, and he is a climate change ecologist who works in terrestrial environments, so really more in the realm of wildlife ecology. So what we have amongst our PIs is aquatic, climate, and then terrestrial ecology. And the three of us cover a pretty broad range of bases of sort of the overall realm of what the CASC does. So we are pretty spread out, and our niche is somewhat differentiated. The three of us have been talking about how we view our role in this as in the context of the CASC, and we really view ourselves as representatives of UW-Madison, with the idea that we want to engage the broader UW-Madison community and activities of the CASC. So we're connectors, and we really want to do everything we can to draw in other individuals, institutions, and expertise at UW-Madison to participate in the CASC. So that's, I think, in our conversations, that's what we have been most excited about. I'll talk a little bit about our individual institutions as well, recognizing that this is just a sampling of the expertise that is at Madison. I'm the director of the UW-Madison Center for Limnology. The Center for Limnology has the Hasler Lab in Madison, which is a facility right on Lake Mendota, shown at the top. We have Trout Lake Station in Vilas County in northern Wisconsin, and we also have an experimental facility. So our area of expertise is freshwaters, lakes in particular. We have a long-term ecological research site. We have a bunch of faculty and research scientists, and lots of research collaborations with agencies. So that's sort of the freshwater realm, again, represented by me. Dan Vimont is the director of the Center for Climate Research. They do a wide range of interdisciplinary work relating to climate and climate impacts. They do a lot of studies like, do maps of like downscaling climate projections. They have a number of scientists and affiliates, and as a center, they have expertise in global and regional climate modeling, observation, including paleoclimate work. So again, very broad and interdisciplinary research center that I sort of view as a hub of climate-focused work at UW-Madison. And then finally, there's Ben Zuckerberg, who is in the Department of Forest and Wildlife Ecology. And this department dates back to 1933. It was started by Aldo Leopold. Today, they do a wide range of work in the realm of research, but also instruction and extension related to forest and wildlife ecology and management. And they have a number of faculty and staff with expertise in a wide range of topics that connect to climate. The department also has a natural resources station in northern Wisconsin. That's a hub for a lot of work in the northern half of the state. So again, each one of us represents a unit, and we have our own expertise, but we really see ourselves as sort of a gateway into the broader community. And there are a whole range of other units and organizations at UW-Madison that are interested and have relevance that ties into this, into the Midwest CASC. Examples include University of Wisconsin Extension, which is part of UW-Madison. There is a very active organization called the Wisconsin Initiative on Climate Change Impacts, and that has been active and it involves collaborations with a lot of managers and management agencies. There's a cross-campus group at UW-Madison that deals with everything relating to water, and there's about 100 plus faculty affiliates in this group called Water at UW-Madison. There's the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies, UW Biotechnology Center. We have strong connections, enduring connections with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources, as well as the Wisconsin co-op units. So that is my quick and dirty overview of UW-Madison. We are really happy to be part of this, and the expertise at UW-Madison as a really large research-focused university is broad. And Ben and Dan and I are really meant to be the gateway to that expertise, and we look forward to being part of the community.
Jake, I appreciate that so much, the comment about being the gateway or the ambassador. And that's really what the key role for our investigators is, to bring what their organizations and institutions can bear and to serve as cheerleaders, enablers at those institutions so that those folks can engage with the CASC. And I'm grateful that you do that work for the University of Wisconsin. Thank you. And we are a couple minutes over. I hope folks would notice, those of you are still here, I put in the chat window a link if you would like to be on a growing listserv specific to this science seminar. Meanwhile, we hope that you will join us next month, 4th Mondays of every month at noon Central Time. Thank you, consortium members, for your presentations, and everyone have a great week. Take care.